Have you ever wondered if it's possible to find love again later in life? Does growing older mean giving up on companionship, on the warmth of someone by your side? Today we bring you the heartfelt story of Mr. Tan, a 65-year-old man who, after years of loneliness, decided to seek love once more. But just 5 days after getting married, he faced an unexpected and painful truth. His journey is not just about romance, it's about understanding, acceptance, and the challenges of relationships in later years. Stay with us until the end of this video to uncover the lessons hidden in his story, lessons that may change the way we see love, aging, and companionship. And before we begin, if you enjoy stories like this, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Now let's dive into Mr. Tan's journey. Growing old often brings a sense of solitude. After a lifetime of hard work, raising children, and fulfilling responsibilities, many elderly individuals find themselves alone, longing for companionship. Society has become more accepting of remarriage in later years, and many seniors seek a life partner to share their golden years. But while finding love again can be fulfilling, it also comes with unique challenges. A successful relationship requires understanding, patience, and mutual respect. Differences in habits, expectations, and even personal sensitivities can create unexpected obstacles. Without empathy and compromise, even the most promising relationships can fall apart. This brings us to the story of Mr. Tan, a 65-year-old widower. For many years, he lived alone after losing his wife in a tragic accident. His children grew up, got married, and started their own families, leaving him with an empty house and silent nights. At first, he embraced solitude, enjoying the freedom to live life at his own pace. But as time passed, the loneliness became overwhelming. There was no one to talk to, no one to share meals with, and no one to rely on during difficult times. Realizing he could no longer endure the emptiness, Mr. Tan decided to open his heart to love once again. Through a mutual acquaintance, he met Mrs. Mai, a 62-year-old woman who was also looking for a companion. She was kind, warm, and full of life. From their very first meeting, they felt an immediate connection. They spent time together, sharing stories of their past, their dreams for the future, and their hopes for companionship. Since both were retired, they had plenty of time to nurture their relationship. They took daily walks, cooked meals together, and supported each other in small but meaningful ways. Mrs. Mai often visited Mr. Tan's home, helping him with household chores and bringing a sense of warmth back into his life. For the first time in years, Mr. Tan felt alive again. After 6 months of growing closer, he was convinced that remarrying would bring them both happiness and security. He consulted his children, who wholeheartedly supported his decision. With their blessing, Mr. Tan and Mrs. Mai decided to get married and start a new chapter together. To show his sincerity and trust, Mr. Tan made a significant gesture. He entrusted Mrs. Mai with his financial assets. He transferred his savings, pension, and even his house documents into her care, believing that transparency was key to a strong marriage. He wanted to make sure she felt secure and valued. Everything seemed perfect. But just 5 days after the wedding, their relationship fell apart. It started on their first night living together. Mrs. Mai noticed something that disturbed her: Mr. Tan's natural body scent. She found it unpleasant and told him directly. Mr. Tan, unaware of any issue, was embarrassed but eager to fix it. That night, he took an extra long shower, scrubbing himself thoroughly with soap and applying perfume. But it didn't help. The next day, Mrs. Mai complained again, saying that no matter how much he bathed, the smell persisted. She avoided close contact and even covered her nose when they were in the same room. Mr. Tan felt humiliated. He sought medical advice, hoping for a solution. The doctor explained that as people age, their bodies naturally produce a distinct scent due to hormonal changes. It was not something that could be completely eliminated, only managed through good hygiene and ventilation. Determined to save his marriage, Mr. Tan spent a large sum of money on expensive colognes and body sprays, hoping to mask the scent. But Mrs. Mai's complaints only intensified. She claimed that even the house itself had absorbed his scent, making it unbearable for her to stay. By the 5th day, Mr. Tan reached his breaking point. After another long shower and an overwhelming amount of perfume, He walked into the bedroom confidently, hoping for a different reaction. But instead Mrs. Mai recoiled in disgust, saying, "Even perfume can't mask it. My eyes are burning. I feel nauseous." Those words cut deep. Feeling rejected, frustrated, and humiliated, Mr. Tan finally snapped. "If you don't want to be with me, just say so. Stop making excuses." That night, he slept in another room, consumed by disappointment. The next morning, Mrs. Mai packed her bags and left. A few days later, they officially divorced, ending a marriage that lasted less than a week. What went wrong? How could something as seemingly minor as a natural body scent lead to such a heartbreaking outcome? The truth is, it wasn't just about the smell. It was about compatibility, expectations, and the lack of true acceptance. Mr. Tan had entered the marriage with hopes of companionship, support, and mutual care. But he realized too late that love, especially in later years, requires more than just shared interests. It requires deep understanding, patience, and the ability to embrace each other's imperfections. His story teaches us an important lesson: not every solution to loneliness is found in marriage. Sometimes the greatest companionship comes from self-acceptance and finding joy in one's own company. But is this the end of Mr. Tan's journey? Or is there still hope for a different kind of happiness? Stay with us as we uncover the deeper lessons from his experience in the next section. The days following the divorce were some of the loneliest of Mr. Tan's life. Sitting in his quiet home, he found himself trapped in a cycle of regret and self-doubt. Just days ago, he had envisioned a future filled with companionship, warmth, and understanding. Now, all that remained was the deafening silence of an empty house. The thought of returning to his old life, eating meals alone, having no one to talk to in the evenings, and feeling the weight of solitude, filled him with sadness. Did I make a mistake? He wondered. Was I too quick to trust? Was I not good enough? These questions played over and over in his mind, leaving him feeling helpless and confused. The divorce had happened so suddenly that he barely had time to process it. One moment he was a married man, with hopes for the future. The next he was back to where he started, alone. More than anything, Mr. Tan felt betrayed. He had opened his heart and trusted Mrs. Mai completely. He had given her access to his financial assets, welcomed her into his home, and made every effort to make her feel secure. Yet, despite all his sincerity, she had walked away over something he couldn't even control. The pain of rejection was deeper than he had expected. It wasn't just about losing a wife, it was about being discarded for something as natural as aging. At night he found it hard to sleep. He kept replaying every conversation, every moment leading up to the breakup, trying to understand what went wrong. He had tried everything to fix the problem, bathing multiple times a day, using expensive colognes, even consulting a doctor. Yet none of it had been enough. And that was the hardest truth to accept. No matter how much effort he put in, he could not change the fact that he was aging. His body, his appearance, even his scent, these were things he had no control over. And now he was starting to wonder, if even my wife couldn't accept me, who else would? Loneliness is something that many elderly individuals struggle with. But rejection? That was something Mr. Tan hadn't expected to experience at this stage in life. For the first time he felt truly invisible, as if no matter how kind, caring, or devoted he was, he would always be seen as just an old man rather than a person with dreams, feelings, and love to give. Was this what the rest of his life would look like? Would he spend his remaining years longing for connection, only to be pushed away again? Or was there another way forward? As the days passed, Mr. Tan slowly came to terms with his solitude. But something felt different this time. Before his marriage to Mrs. Mai, he had grown used to being alone. He had his routines, his small joys, and his quiet acceptance of life as it was. But now, after briefly experiencing companionship again, the emptiness felt heavier than ever. His once cozy home now seemed colder. The chair across from him at the dining table sat empty, a reminder that he no longer had someone to share meals with. The days felt longer, and the nights were filled with a silence that was almost unbearable. Even the simple act of drinking tea in the morning had lost its warmth, because now there was no one to ask how he slept, no one to share in the small, ordinary moments that make life meaningful. This is the reality that many elderly individuals face. As people grow older, their world starts to shrink. Children, once the center of their lives, grow up and move away, caught up in the demands of their own families and careers. Friends begin to drift apart, whether due to illness, relocation, or even passing away. The lively conversations and laughter that once filled their days become rare. And in the absence of these connections, loneliness takes root. Studies have shown that loneliness in old age can be as damaging to health as smoking or chronic illness. It doesn't just affect emotions, it weakens the immune system, increases the risk of heart disease, and even accelerates cognitive decline. Humans are social beings, and without meaningful connections, the mind and body suffer. But the hardest part of loneliness isn't just being alone, it's feeling forgotten. Mr. Tan knew that his children still loved him. They visited when they could, called when they had time. But life had taken them in different directions, and he understood that their responsibilities came first. He never wanted to burden them, but deep down he wished he had someone who was there every day, someone who didn't visit out of obligation but because they genuinely wanted to share their life with him. That was why he had pursued marriage. He thought a life partner would be the answer to his loneliness. But now, after everything he had been through, he started to wonder, was marriage really the only way to find happiness in old age? Or was there another way to fill the emptiness in his heart? Sitting alone in his quiet home, Mr. Tan began to reflect on everything that had happened. For so long he had believed that happiness in old age meant finding a partner, someone to share his days with, to bring warmth and laughter back into his life. But after his failed marriage, he started to question whether love and companionship had to come from a spouse at all. Perhaps, he thought, he had been looking for happiness in the wrong place. Love, after all, is more than just marriage. It exists in the bonds of friendship, in the support of family, and in the simple acts of kindness that make life meaningful. Maybe instead of focusing on what he had lost, he needed to focus on what he still had. Determined to change his perspective, Mr. Tan decided to take small steps toward rebuilding his life. First, he started reconnecting with old friends, people he had lost touch with over the years. He picked up the phone and called an old colleague, someone he used to share coffee with every morning before retirement. To his surprise, the conversation flowed effortlessly, as if no time had passed. They agreed to meet for lunch, and for the first time in weeks, Mr. Tan had something to look forward to. Next, he reached out to his children, not to ask for anything but simply to talk. Instead of waiting for them to call him, he made the first move. He shared stories from his past, asked about their lives, and took an active interest in what they were doing. And as he did, he realized something important. Love was always there, he had just stopped noticing it. He also joined a local senior club, a small community where retirees gathered for tea, games, and casual conversations. At first, he felt out of place. But as he listened to others share their own experiences, stories of loss, of love, of finding new joys in life, he began to feel a sense of connection again. Slowly, his days became fuller. His phone rang more often, not just with calls from his children, but from old friends and new acquaintances. His evenings were no longer filled with silence, but with laughter and companionship, even if it wasn't the romantic kind he once sought. And then one day he had a realization. Perhaps true companionship isn't about finding one person to complete you. Perhaps it's about surrounding yourself with people who make you feel understood, appreciated, and valued. He had spent so much time chasing the idea of marriage that he had overlooked all the other forms of love that had always been there. And for the first time in a long time, he felt at peace. As Mr. Tan embraced this new perspective, he began to see aging in a different light. For years, he had believed that growing old meant losing purpose, that without a spouse, life would feel empty. But now he started to realize that meaning and fulfillment didn't have to come from marriage. They could come from within. One evening, while browsing the internet, he came across a story that deeply inspired him. It was about a 90-year-old woman who had become famous on social media, not because of wealth or beauty, but because of her unwavering passion for life. She ran multiple small food stalls, working late into the night, not because she had to, but because she loved what she did. When asked if she ever felt exhausted at her age, she simply smiled and said, "If you do what you love, you will never feel tired." And even if you do, that tiredness is also a kind of joy. Her words struck a deep chord with Mr. Tan. He realized that passion and purpose have no age limit. Society often tells older people that their best years are behind them, that they should slow down, step aside, and fade into the background. But in reality, every stage of life presents opportunities for growth, learning, and self-discovery. Inspired by this realization, Mr. Tan decided to pursue something that had always interested him: gardening. He had loved growing plants in his youth but had never taken the time to truly cultivate a garden of his own. Now, with an open schedule and a fresh mindset, he began transforming his backyard into a vibrant oasis. At first, it was just a simple hobby, something to fill the hours and keep his hands busy. But as days turned into weeks, he found himself deeply invested in the process. He studied different plant species, experimented with soil compositions, and even started sharing gardening tips with neighbors. What began as a personal project soon turned into something bigger, a way to connect with others, to nurture life, and to find daily joy in small, simple moments. And it didn't stop there. With a newfound appreciation for technology, he started watching online tutorials, joining forums for gardening enthusiasts, and even sharing photos of his plants on social media. To his surprise, people responded. Strangers commented on his progress, asked for advice, and shared their own gardening journeys. For the first time in a long time, Mr. Tan felt excited to wake up in the morning. He no longer saw aging as a limitation but as an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to inspire others. Happiness, he realized, wasn't about finding someone to complete him. It was about finding something that made him feel alive. Looking back on his journey, Mr. Tan realized that his experience had taught him some of the most important lessons about life, love, and aging. He had learned that companionship comes in many forms, not just through marriage but through friendships, family, and meaningful connections with the world around him. He had also discovered that self-worth should never be defined by others. When Mrs. Mai rejected him over something he couldn't control, he felt deeply hurt. But in time, he understood that true acceptance comes from within, that no one should have to change who they are just to be loved. Most importantly, he came to see that happiness isn't something that comes from another person. It's something we create for ourselves. Whether it's through pursuing hobbies, forming new friendships, or simply appreciating life's small joys, fulfillment is always within reach. His story is a powerful reminder that life doesn't stop at any age. No matter how old you are, there are always new experiences to embrace, new connections to build, and new ways to find purpose. So, as you reflect on Mr. Tan's journey, ask yourself, what truly brings you joy? What passions have you set aside for too long? And what steps can you take today to live a more fulfilling life? Because the truth is, it's never too late to start again. In today's society, many people grow up believing that marriage is the key to happiness. We see it in movies, in books, and in the expectations of those around us. But while love is beautiful, it is not the only path to a fulfilling life, especially in later years. For those who have lost a spouse, gone through divorce, or simply never married, it can be easy to feel like something is missing. The world often makes older individuals feel like their time for love and adventure has passed. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Happiness is not about who is by your side but how you choose to live. Mr. Tan could have spent the rest of his life feeling bitter about his failed marriage. He could have withdrawn from the world, believing he was too old to start over. But instead, he made a choice to embrace life in a new way. And that's a choice we all have. Maybe for you, happiness means reconnecting with old friends. Maybe it means picking up a long-lost hobby, traveling to a place you've always wanted to see, or simply taking time each day to appreciate the present moment. Whatever it is, don't let age be an excuse to stop living fully. Because the truth is, you are never too old to learn, to grow, or to create a new beginning. So what about you? Have you ever faced a moment like Mr. Tan, where you felt lost, rejected, or unsure of what the future held? How did you overcome it? If you have a story to share, leave a comment below. Your experience might offer encouragement to someone going through a similar struggle. Loneliness, change, and uncertainty are challenges we all face at some point in life. But no matter where you are in your journey, remember this: you are not alone. There are always new ways to connect, to find meaning, and to rediscover joy. Sometimes all it takes is a small step, a phone call to an old friend, joining a community group, or simply allowing yourself to try something new. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to engage. Like this video if you found it meaningful. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an inspiring story. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message, share this video with them. A simple story can sometimes make a world of difference. Thank you for watching. And remember, life doesn't stop at any age, it just changes. Embrace it, move forward, and find joy in every stage. We'll see you in the next video.